Hey folks, I'm pulling a book from the juvenile shelf today. I'm once again reviewing a book I read when I was younger that at the time I couldn't talk about with anyone else because none of my friends had ever heard of it. This time, it's the last of the really great Whangdoodles. I'll pause so that we can giggle at the silly word, Whangdoodle, and now we can move on. A story for children written by Julie Andrews Edwards. You know her of The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins and so many other things, and a writer of kids' books as well. This book was originally published in 1974. What I've got here is the 25th anniversary edition, which I ordered from a Scholastic book order as a kid. I loved those things. I was really taken with this book when I was younger. I reread it a lot, getting more enjoyment from it each time, and even now, just holding it makes me happy. I love the colorful cover, and the pages are, I don't know, there's just something nice about them that makes that nice crinkly sound when you open it. It's about three siblings, Ben, Tom, and Lindy Potter. Their mom urges them out of the house one day, and as they're wandering around the zoo, they encounter a man who asks if they've ever considered meeting a Whangdoodle. Of course they haven't, because they've never heard of such an animal, and they think the man must be pulling their legs. But as they get to know this man, whose name is Professor Savant, he tells them more about the Whangdoodle, who comes from Whangdoodle Land, a place where magical creatures have retreated from our world, and he starts to show them how to get there. You know, I've said before, and recently, that as a child I wasn't much interested in fantasy, but for some reason, most of the kids' books, that I've chosen to review fall into that category. This is a story about imagination, adventure, perception, youth. It has elements reminiscent of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. The British really know how to rock that children in a magical world thing, don't they? But while it bears the influence of these older stories, I think it's still its own thing. There are certain scenes and ideas in here that made an impression on young me that I've never forgotten. The bulk of the book is a fantastical journey, but before the children can get to the point where they can make that journey, they have to learn to see the world in a different way, and that's something the professor teaches them. One of the first things he points out is how people are always looking down everywhere they go, and he tells the kids you need to look up. Observe the sky, the trees, the weather, take in all the little details. There's so much of the world going by, and if you spend all your time looking down at your shoes, or at the sidewalk, or at your phone, if I can update it to the 21st century, you're going to miss it. As the children learn from the professor, they start to look at everything with new eyes, using their imaginations and growing more observant. There's one part I always remembered when the little girl looks down at her plate and she sees the food not as food, but as geographical landforms that she could travel if only she were small enough. The professor pushes the kids to use all their senses to their fullest potential, and I remember trying to take his advice and imitate what the kids did. Some of the characters and creatures and settings are unforgettable too. The high-behind Splinter Cat, the nervous Wiffle Bird, the Sidewinders, that one path where everybody hiccups. Of course there's the professor, who's a lovable oddball. There's a scene later in the book, I won't go into details about it because of spoilers, but it's a rather emotional, realistic scene that touches on the difficulties of age and defeatism. That's deep stuff, especially for a children's story, but it's handled in a sad, sensitive way I've always appreciated, even when I was a little kid 10 years old. And Proc. I can't forget Proc. He's the main antagonist, the Prime Minister of Whangdoodle Land, who is determined to keep the professor and the children from reaching the Whangdoodle. He's a very creepy character, frequently described as oily, which is gross, and he has a way of appearing in the room with you and slinking around, which is just, ugh. There are a couple things. There's a scientific angle in the book that comes into play, mainly towards the end. It's posed as a solution to a problem, which as I got older, I realized I didn't care for so much, because it's something I'm not entirely gung-ho about. because of personal preference, personal conviction, and very practically speaking, I don't know, this is the cynic, the realist in me saying this, I do find myself feeling a little like the parents should have asked more questions about what their kids were doing all day, every day with the professor. If it was me, if I was the parent, I'd definitely take more interest in this relationship because it is a little odd. But those minor issues aside, I have always had a lot of fondness for this book, for the way it challenged my imagination and encouraged me to take in the world, to take in the details, and I'll always consider it a childhood favorite. Let me know if you've read this one, I'd love to know what you think of it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, bye!